Good morning, students. Hope all of you are fine. In this lecture, we will continue with chapter 11, and name of this chapter is Path to Modernization. Till now, we have discussed various topics about Japan, about the westernization and tradition, daily life, the overcoming of modernity, and after defeat in Second World War, how Japan re-emerged as a global economic power. So the today's topic is China. In this topic, we will study about the changes in China or the modernization in China. The modern history of China has revolved around the question of how to regain sovereignty and the humiliation of foreign occupation and bring about equality and development. Because till that time China was a colony. So that is why now the main question was how to regain sovereignty. Chinese debates were marked by the views of three groups. The early reformers such as Kang Youwei or Liang Qichou tried to use traditional ideas in new and different ways to meet the challenges posed by the West. And second was the Republican revolutionaries, such as Sun Yat sen, the first president of the Republic, were inspired by ideas from Japan and the West. And the third was the Communist Party of China, CCP, wanted to end age old inequalities and drive out the foreigners. So there were the basically three groups that we have read, and beta from here one question can also be framed about these three groups, right? So the beginning of modern China can be traced to its first encounter with the West in the 16th and 17th centuries when Jesuit missionaries introduced Western sciences such as astronomy and mathematics. Beta, these Jesuits, these were the Christian missionaries who visited different places. So, limited though its immediate impact was, it set in motion events that gathered momentum in the 19th century. Means till 16th and 17th century, when these Jesuit missionaries introduced Western sciences, till that its immediate impact was limited. But later on, it get the momentum when Britain used force to expand its lucrative trade in opium, leading to the First Opium War. This undermined the ruling Qing dynasty and strengthened demands for reform and change. We can see this image beta. This is related to the Opium War. It is an European painting. And do you know beta, sometime the image questions can also be asked. The demand for Chinese goods such as tea, silk, created a serious balance of trade problem. Western goods did not find a market in China, so payment had to be in silver. The East India Company found a new option, opium, which grew in India. They sold the opium in China and gave the silver that they earned to company agents in Canton in return for letters of credit. And the company used the silver to buy tea, silk, to sell in Britain. This was the triangular trade between Britain, India, and China. And this was known as the opium trade. King reformers such as Kang Youwei and Liang Qichou realized the need to strengthen the system and initiated policies to build a modern administrative system, a new army, and an educational system, and set up local assemblies to establish constitutional government. Now you can see this first category of reformers, they initiated different policy like the modern administrative system, the army, the educational system, and the constitutional government. They saw the need to protect China from colonization. Now, this first group, it just saw its that very first requirement was to protect China from colonization. The negative example of colonized countries worked powerfully on Chinese thinkers. The partition of Poland in the 18th century was a much discussed example, so much so that by the late 1890s it came to be used as a verb to Poland us. India was another such example. In 1903, the thinker Liang Qiu, who believed that only by making people aware that China was a nation would they be able to resist the West, wrote that India was a country that was destroyed by a non country, that is the East India Company. It means, as we know in Asia, so many European colonies were there. So these Chinese thinkers, they just took examples of these, and they just didn't want to repeat all these examples in their country. He criticized Indians for being cruel to their own people and subservient to the British. Such arguments carried a powerful appeal as ordinary Chinese could see that the British used Indian soldiers in their wars on China. As we know, with the Indian sepoys, you must have heard this word in independence time, when there was the Indian British Army. Then Indian sepoys, they were sent for fighting overseas wars also. So, above all, many felt that traditional ways of thinking had to be changed. Confucianism, developed from the teachings of Confucius and his disciples, was concerned with good conduct, practical wisdom, and proper social relationships. It influenced the Chinese attitude toward life, provided social standards, and laid the basis for political theories and institutions. It was now seen as a major barrier to new ideas and institutions. With that, to train people in modern subjects, students were sent to study in Japan, Britain, and France and bring back new ideas. It means now students were just going just to gain new ideas to Japan, Britain, and France. Many Chinese students went to Japan in 1890s. They not only brought back new ideas, but many became leading republicans also. The Chinese borrowed even Japanese translations of European words such as justice, rights, and revolution, because they use the same ideographic graphic script, a reversal of the traditional relationship. In 1905, just after the Russo-Japanese War, the centuries old Chinese examination system that gave candidates entry into the elite ruling class was abolished. Actually, beta, in China, there was an examination system which gave the entry into the ruling class. Now that examination system was abolished, and you can see this source, and name of this source is the examination system. Like we were just talking about the abolition of the Chinese examination system, this is related to that. Entry to elite ruling class had been largely through an examination, and this required writing an 8-legged essay in classical Chinese in a prescribed form. The examination was held twice every 3 years at different levels, and of those allowed to sit, only 1-2% passed the first level, usually by the age of 24, to become what was called beautiful talent. It means whosoever has qualified the first step, he was known as the beautiful talent. At any given time before 1850, there were about 5,26,869 civil and 2,12,330 military provincial degree holders in the whole country. Since there were only 27,000 official positions, many lower level degree holders did not have jobs. So the examination acted as a barrier to the development of science and technology as it demanded only literary skills. As we know, like we have read in its beginning, इसकी beginning में हमने क्या पढ़ा था, that in this examination only the writing skills were tested. So, but for the development of science and technology, other skills were also required. So, in 1905, it was abolished as it was based on skills in classical Chinese learning that had, it was felt, no relevance for the modern world. So, beta, this was the topic for today. Hope all of you have understood the topic. Thank you and have a nice day.